Okay, well, I think every New Yorker will tell you the same thing. It was a beautiful day, a lot like today. And, you know, the promise of fall, which is a special time in New York City. And I was walking my dog, and my husband wasn't going to be there that day. And just as I walked back into the loft, the whole building shook. And I assumed it was a crane. I thought they were doing roof work on the crane, on the roof work with the crane, and I assumed a crane had fallen because the whole building shook. And then I heard people screaming and ran outside and saw people running away from the building, and nobody knew what had happened. And then I went back in the building and turned the television on, and we had 2 employees at the time, and they had gotten into Manhattan, and they knew that a plane had struck the building, and as we were watching TV, the building fell, so we could see it on TV, but we could feel it. Our whole building shook again, and I sent them home right away, and didn't expect, you know, the rest of the day to go like it did. And I didn't leave because we still had lights and power, and I just thought I should stay and run the business. And then the second building fell, and it did sound like an explosion, and people were covered in ash, and it was horrific. And before the buildings fell, I was outside again, and you could see people jumping, and it was horrific. I couldn't understand how it happened. I mean, everyone assumed the first plane was an accident. And I remember when I walked my dog how clear it was, and you just assumed it was an accident, but how anyone could fly into the towers on a day like that was just impossible to believe. And then yes, it was surreal, and people were shocked, really, really shocked and scared. Well, I had the television on, and I think when the second plane hit, I mean, that's when you knew it was an attack. But at that time, you didn't know who or why, and I was alone. Everyone left my building. It was a 5-story building, and every apartment had cleared out. And at 5 o'clock that day, I was walking my dog again, and the third building fell, and they knew that was going to happen. But that held all the power grid and the phones. So my experience was particularly terrifying because I didn't know what was going on that night. I still didn't know who did it or why. And I remember sitting on my couch that night with the candles on, and I kept waiting for the ambulances, but there weren't any, so that you knew everyone was dead. And then I did hear fighter jets, and that was the scariest time because I didn't know whose they were, ours or theirs, whoever they were. And my car was, I had a summer house in New Jersey, but my car was, by the time I realized I should leave, I couldn't get out. They had cordoned off the whole area. So I was stuck there 5 days. I went out and it was very quiet, really, and you saw the firemen and all the people that were working to try to find survivors. And you would they'd be covered in ash, like you see in the billboards, those pictures. That's exactly what they look like. Exhausted, stunned, and filthy. And you would just, as you walked by them, you just nod to each other in acknowledgement of, you know, how awful it was. The dust from the buildings was about I guess about 8 inches as you walk through, and And the smell was terrible. You knew it was not good to be breathing that.
Yeah.
You know, probably 5,000, 10,000 computers, among other things. Actually, when I left, I was on an inhaler for a year. So it was awful. I was very affected by it for a while. I was afraid when I heard loud noises. I was pretty shook up for about a year. I didn't watch anything about the attack on television, no movies. I couldn't even read the New York Times. I was a big New York Times fan. I couldn't deal with it. It took about a year. Well, I think for a brief period of time, anyway, the country was united. And I have a lot of friends from New York who said they were shocked when they traveled to other parts of the country and saw how it affected people that didn't live in New York. I think when you live in New York, you kind of think that people don't like New Yorkers. And it isn't the case at all. And that was surprising to see how united the country was. And I think for a lovely period of time, the world was united. And I think that's all gone away. I don't know about the country so much. I think that's gone away too. And it's too bad that people need something like that to remember that we are one country with the same goals. But my son lived there for a while. Now he lives in LA, and my husband's son still lives there, and we go back, every year or so. The first time was hard.
Yeah.
We flew over, and they had the beams from the World Trade Center, the light beams, the two beams coming up, and that was very moving. And I was scared to go back in a way. I thought I would have some flashbacks, but I'm okay with it. I mean, I'm not scared. So, and I still love New York and occasionally miss it, but I don't want to live there anymore. Some people really have personalized it, and they'll talk about how they were on a plane and they heard it and had to land, and they're quite emotional about it. And I used to feel that they needed to not talk about it so much. And I don't even feel like I should talk about it too much, because I'm not a victim.
Yeah.
And I'm not a hero. I was just there. So I don't feel like I'm special in any way. I just wanted to testify what it was like that day. And I think some people really do internalize it or personalize it, and really the ones we should be talking about are the ones that died and the people they left behind, and the unbelievable courage of the police and firemen, many of whom died that day. Like, there was a fire station on the next block, and I went to see the guys, and they were proud in a way that they hadn't lost anybody, but almost guilty in a way. So, and I also have a friend whose brother was a firefighter who was off that day and pretty much had a nervous breakdown because he wasn't there. He felt he should have been there. So they're the people, I think, that we should talk about, not just the casual bystander, of which I was one. My life changed, but my life changed for the better. So, I'm happier than I've ever been, and I'm thrilled to live here. And that was just a small part of why I got here sooner, probably, than I would have. So.